Ballistics gel. What are you getting wrong? Why is it important? And what do you need to know? That's what we're going to be taking a look at in this video. Be sure to stay tuned because it's actually super important. We'll start by briefly covering what is ballistics gel. Ballistics gel is basically a rendered substance from animal tissue meant to approximate the density of human tissue that is typically shaped into a block the shape of a rectangle. Now, under careful test conditions, ammunition is then shot into the blocks, oftentimes with high-speed cameras involved, to test the bullet performance. The factors most closely observed during tests are bullet penetration, permanent wound channel, temporary wound channel, and fragmentation versus tumbling, among other things that they're looking for. Now, if you want me to go into more of these other factors and what do they all mean, let me know in the comment field below. But for now, just understand that when we're talking about handguns in a self-defense shoot scenario, understand that generally speaking, the most important things we're looking for is penetration first and permanent wound channel second as far as key performance indicators. When and why did we start using ballistics gel? Well, the when was following 1986, and the why had to do with the Miami shootout between two heavily armed felons as well as 8 FBI agents who were following a string of successful robberies that they had engaged in. After an intense 5-minute firefight that saw 145 shots exchange, only ended by the death of the 2 bad guys, as well as the wounding of 5 FBI agents and the death of 2 of them. If you're keeping count, that means of the 8 FBI agents who showed up on the scene, only 1 of them escaped without any wounds. Now, these just weren't any felons. Both were discharged from the Army infantry and were not new to guns or tactics. But the fallout from the incident was severe, swift, and massive, and involved a meticulous FBI study that attributed a lack of firepower to the FBI agents, despite outnumbering the bad guys by a margin of 8-2, or if you're doing 5th grade math, 5-1, to deal with what they were up against. Among the problems was the lack of terminal ballistic performance of their ammunition against the bad guys. One example of this was that an agent actually scored a direct hit on one of the bad guys, shot him on top of his heart, but the ammunition actually did not penetrate far enough to the heart in order to stop the fight. As a note, following that shot that hit the bad guy in the chest above his heart, that same bad guy went on to kill 2 of the agents as well as wound a 3rd. As noted by the FBI's chief of firearms training unit at the time, all other things aside, Miami was an ammunition failure. Boy, is that right. Now, the FBI developed a new stringent testing protocol as a result of the 1986 shootout to better understand the quality of their ammunition to assess and predict real-life street performance in an effort to save lives by making sure that their agents and officers were equipped with the best effective terminal performance to stop the threat, to stop the fight. So the FBI introduced 6 tests in order to analyze all their different ammunition that they were considering. This involved discharging a handgun into ballistics gel, as well as coupling it with different barriers to include fabrics and all sorts of other things to simulate real-life environmental factors that agents might be facing. So for instance, if you're shooting a bad guy, that bad guy's probably not naked. They're probably going to have some sort of, whether it's summer attire, whether it's a heavy winter jacket, maybe they're in a car, something like that. So the 6 tests really quickly are bare gelatin, heavy clothing on gelatin, light clothing on gelatin with a steel barrier, light clothing on gelatin with a drywall barrier, light clothing on gelatin with a plywood barrier, and light clothing on gelatin with an autoglass barrier. If the ammunition failed to penetrate at least 12 inches, that ammunition was considered a failure. Not good enough. After all, things in real life, in order to stop bad guys, they have to penetrate to vital organs, period. Or else, as we already saw in 1986, the bad guy can just keep fighting. Now, we likewise, just like we need a minimum of 12 inches, we also want to see a maximum of 18, because otherwise it turns into an overpenetration risk. In other words, the bullet can go right through the bad guy, come out the back. What's the problem with that? 2 things. Number 1, we are fundamentally, of course, putting folks at risk who might be downrange, and that's not something we want to do, all things considered. Number 2 is the fact that if that bullet actually passed through the bad guy and kept going, that bullet still had energy. That energy, of course, is what kept it going. And that's obviously a waste because we want to be able to put all of our energy into the bad guy, because that means that potentially we could have stopped the fight if it hit the right spot. Shot placement is everything, of course, but we didn't, maybe, because we didn't use all of our energy efficiently enough. Ammunition is scored on a basis of 500 possible points, with the higher the score, generally speaking, the better. I will also note that the FBI is careful to say that the test is not a strict determinant of real-world effectiveness. That's a fancy way of saying that, look, Just because something scored a point or two better on this particular test doesn't mean it's going to be better in real life. However, it is extremely important to note in the now decades since these tests have emerged that, well, time is showing us that the best tool that we have to predict real-world effectiveness are actually these tests. I also want to throw in there one more thing, which is the fact that we're talking about the armed citizen who's probably, for the most part, not going to be super worried about defeating barriers and all that kind of stuff. That, of course, the majority of FBI tests do deal with barrier analysis, but just the same, let's throw that out to the side. So, as a note, why are we testing to 12 inches to 18 inches of penetration in ballistics gel? I can hear the keyboards clacking away from someone. Vital organs are not 12 to 18 inches deep on someone. Well, I'll ignore the Walmart cheap shots here that I could point out. But again, it's important to note that, again, while ballistics gel is meant to be similar to human tissue, this is not meant to be a one-to-one comparison to the human body. So if that's the case, why are we so obsessed with 12 to 18 inches, right? Well, it has to do with the fact that ballistics gel is really meant to do two things, and they're meant to do two things really, really well. Number one, because we can compare apples to apples under proper test conditions, such as temperature, gel consistency, and so forth, this allows us to show how different calibers perform, how different bullets perform, and of course, different velocities, depending upon barrel length and all that other kind of stuff, and the effects of how all those could interplay when we're talking about creating those initial criteria, such as, of course, penetration depth, permanent wound channel, temporary wound channel. We talk about cavitation, that's where we're talking about temporary wound channel, and of course fragmentation and tumbling and all that kind of stuff with the bullet. So it's going to be important to keep that in mind, that this allows us to do apples to apples comparison of different types of ammunition, calibers, and so forth, all in one test. And we also know now from decades of checking the morgue and police reports that ammunition that tends to perform well within certain operational parameters or a certain window, 12 inches, 18 inches, all that kind of stuff, in gel also highly correlates to excellent performance in the street. While this may have been a very theoretical exercise when these tests came out, decades in the street have shown us that this is something that, while by no means perfect, is something that we can heavily lean and rely on. So this does not mean that it is the end-all be-all, but again, through bottom line, decades of data harvesting, it's the best tool that we have. So what are the bottom line takeaways that I want you to have from this video? Number one, if you're serious about self-defense and carrying a weapon, don't just purchase any ammunition and throw it in your firearm and say, you know what, a bullet's a bullet, good to go. That is simply not the case. What you need is you need to choose an effective caliber, and then you need to choose the highest quality hollow point ammunition that you can get your hands on, consistent with local laws, looking at you, New Jersey, in order to make sure that you have the best tool possible to save your life or the life of a loved one. Again, buying whatever's cheapest, whoever's laying around, whatever your uncle gave you over the holidays, whatever the case may be, while that might work, don't risk it here, okay? Number two, do your research to figure out what might be the best option. If you don't have the time, then just understand that when we're talking about ammunition brands, generally speaking, what law enforcement tends to trade on heavily, which is Federal and Spear brand ammunition, are likewise pretty safe bets to be at or near the top of the field for whatever respective caliber we're talking about. But again, you need to make sure that you take your own time to do your own research on this. At the end of the day, this is your life, not mine. What do I tell you not to do? Do not buy the latest zombie-killing, flesh-ripping, histrionically marketed brand of bullets. Sensationalist advertising is no replacement for real-world combat effectiveness, especially that proven through decades and sometimes only years, but generally speaking, decades of real-life brands. Sensationalist advertising will also, by the way, do nothing to help you if you are in court for a self-defense shoot, because I assure you that will be part of the prosecutor's opening and closing remarks about why you should spend the rest of your life behind bars. Right. The face-ripping, zombie-killing, all that kind of stuff, leave that for the range, or better yet, probably not at all. What you do need to do, though, is you need to make sure that you do practice with whatever ammunition you are deciding to go with. Yes, I know it's expensive. Hollow point, effective, high-quality hollow point ammunition generally runs a minimum for most folks of anywhere from 50 cents to $1 a round, sometimes depending upon when and the season you're buying it in, upwards of $1.50 to $2 a round. But folks, you want to make sure that you can shoot this effectively because it will generally have more recoil than your range and practice ammo, number one. And number two, you want to make sure that, of course, your gun shoots it effectively too. You want to make sure that your firearm, your chosen self-defense article, your tool, to make sure that it's able to properly cycle the rounds and so forth, all right? So I'm not saying go out there, drop millions of dollars, buying tens of thousands of rounds and put them through, but you're gonna wanna at least make sure that you put through, there's no magic number, but generally speaking, the more the better. If you can do 100 rounds and your gun runs flawlessly with them, with those particular magazines, great, fantastic. You know, back 10, 15 years ago when this stuff was a lot cheaper, you could put a couple hundred rounds through it to make sure, wonderful. For most folks these days, if you can only afford to do a box, I get it. But for whatever, you know, just make sure that you test. Just please, please, please make sure that you test. And again, do your research and homework. If you stayed with me throughout this video so far, I really appreciate that. Do all the YouTube things to help this channel grow. If you support what we're doing here and the principles of what we're trying to put out there, please be sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel, it's absolutely free, and click the notification bell to make sure that you get notified anytime a new video comes out. Also, let me know in the comment field below, what is your favorite type of ammunition? What is your favorite type of caliber? And also, if you want to see me do more videos about ammunition calibers and so forth, let me know. This is stuff I really enjoy doing, but I don't know if this brings any value or any smile or cheer to your day. So let me know in the comment field below. I promise that I'll be checking that all out, and I will see you in the next video.